Hello, everyone. This is Gwydion, and today I'm going to be talking about a solo horror RPG called Under Ashen Skies by Blackoath Entertainment. If you go to the Blackoath Games website, you'll see that Blackoath Entertainment has done several other games, and I'll click up here and show you, including Across a Thousand Dead Worlds, Rift Breakers, Broken Shores, Sacrifice, Warlord Ascendant, and Caer Nethalis Into the Midnight Throne. But I'm a big horror fan, and I came across a game called 10 Candles about a year ago. I still have not had a chance to run it, but I'm really intrigued by it. And this felt similar, but unlike 10 Candles, you don't need a game master. And again, you can play this solo. I'll drop a link to the Blackoath Entertainment site, and I'll also drop a link to their page on DriveThruRPG. You can see I have their page up here. And the main reason I'm showing you is, at least as of the time of recording this video on March 2nd, 2024, they have many titles on sale for GM's Day. So Under Ashen Skies is on sale for the PDF for $12. So if you click on that, I actually purchased, it's going to be a little hard to read on the screen. I purchased the hardcover premium color book, the package, for $50. So I actually got the PDF already. I wanted to keep the hardcover book, and this will probably be a little hard to see, but yeah, this is the book that actually bound myself. I went to Office Depot, and I had them bind it, and it turned out really good. I'm really pleased with how it came out. It cost me about, I want to say $30, $30, but I upgraded the paper, got a pretty nice binding, and it worked really well. So I'm going to switch over to the PDF. Give me 1 second, and I have a little better view of this. Okay. And what I want to do in the video today is I'll talk a bit about the game and the mechanics, because I haven't seen anything out there yet on it. And I believe it was a recent Kickstarter, so it's just getting launched. If you look at the website for Blackoath Games, they still show it as coming soon, but it is available on DriveThruRPG. So there is some intro, kind of a story intro to this that I don't want to spoil. So I'm going to go into quickly. Yeah, I'll go through some of the text, and I'll try not to get too bogged down in the detail, get through a character creation, and we'll call it a day for this video. So I'll read some of this to you. Welcome to Under Ashen Skies, a single-player role-playing game where you take the role of a person who awakes in a world of darkness, loss, and horror with no memories of who they are. In order to understand who you were and what this place is, you must venture out from your apartment, the only place seemingly safe, and explore the different locations and locales of the town of Riverside, encountering other inhabitants of this strange place, some of them as lost as you are, others with a semblance of understanding, indescribable horrors and pieces of your broken mind that will help you learn who you really are. To play, just grab a pencil, paper, some polyhedral dice, and dive into Generate a Story with characters, enemies, and places to explore, all with almost no preparation and without a game master. The game is designed to be modular, allowing you to pick an activity for your gaming session and stop whenever is convenient for you to continue another day. I'll tell you, that's really interesting to me, because my time tends to be limited, a lot of work, a lot of time with the family. So it's really appealing to me to pick something up without having to do a big setup. All right. Welcome to Riverside. Under Ashen Skies takes place in Riverside, a small town on the east coast of the United States that has seen better days. For reasons unbeknownst to you, the town is mostly deserted, and the few inhabitants left seem as lost and unstable as yourself. The worst part is that there's a darkness that has twisted everything, transforming this once idyllic town into your own private hell, pushing you closer and closer towards insanity. Your only chance of escaping this place is to go out there and find answers. I tell you, just reading that summary, this is right at my alley. I love games like Shadow of the Demon Lord. I love the horror, and as I mentioned, 10 Candles and others. I just love that gritty horror vibe. And this PDF and this game has tons of tables. There's a ton of depth to this for a solo RPG. So I'm really excited to jump into this. So let's start. I'm going to flip around. I did some highlighting myself, so the text is not highlighted when it comes to you, obviously. But let's just jump in. I'll go through character creation. So your first step into the world of Under Ashen Skies is taken by creating your player character, who serves as your avatar for interacting with locations and inhabitants of the world. Your character is mechanically defined by attributes, skills, and talents. Attributes are the core capabilities of a character, defining agility, intelligence, strength, etc., while skills are your character's abilities, such as how skillfully they use weapons, talk to non-player characters, or find hidden objects. Talents are unique skills and advantages that will help you deal with the twisted world of Under Ashen Skies, such as special attacks or abilities. Now, you'll see as we go through character creation, but you start with certain attribute scores, and you do have some ability to modify your skills. As far as I can tell, you do not start with talents. Those come further in the game as you level up, you explore, and you unlock certain talents. So let's scroll down a bit. The attributes are going to look very similar if you've played any type of standard role-playing game, including D&D, Pathfinder, anything like that. So the primary attributes are strength, dexterity, constitution, will, intelligence, and charisma. I'm not going to read each of those. Again, most of you probably have a good idea what those are. Now, I did highlight primary attributes start at 10, but can range from 1 to 18. So I read that as all of your attributes start at 10. I did create a form-fillable character sheet, and I will upload this to my Dropbox, post a link for you so that you can download this as well. Let me flip to that for a second. So this is the form-fillable character sheet, and I'm going to title this character. We're just going to title it Gwydion. I know, very creative name. I think this is pronounced Neme, but I could be wrong. I apologize if I'm butchering that. I know it's a word. I believe it has a Greek history and has to do with memory, I believe. So for now, I'm going to pronounce it Neme, and I apologize if I'm butchering that. You can tell me in the comments. Level 1, so I have all of the starting attributes at 10, but you can click into these and modify them if you want. So we'll start there. And this is this is a roll over type of system, D20 system. So when you're doing something like an attribute test, you're going to roll a D20 and add your attributes values. So if your dexterity is 10, and if you roll a 3, you're going to have a 10 plus 3 is 13. And this is where I find the mechanics a little similar to challenge rolls in Shadow of the Demon Lord, which it's always a 10 that you're targeting. So in this case, I just highlighted that. I forgot I had highlighting on. But if your total is equal to or higher than a 20, you succeed. So really simple. Secondary attributes, fate. So this is cool. It's an ability to re-roll any roll. So that's a nice, for a solo game, it's nice to have things like that, in my opinion, to allow you to tip the scales a little bit when you really need it. And PC starts with 5 fate and may gain more during gameplay. So again, I have this set up to where the fate will pre-populate. So when you download this, these scores will be as you see this here. You just won't have name, skills, and those types of things that we will be filling in as we go. All right, let's scroll down a bit to stamina. So stamina is how many actions. It's basically your action economy, I suppose. And each turn you can determine what you want to do. And again, things like sneaking or being cautious take more stamina out of you. So you might not be able to do, like, say, a power attack. I won't get into all of the combat and that level of detail in this video, but hopefully I'll do another one later. So player characters start with 10 points of stamina. And then trauma, you're going to suffer through hellish visions and nightmares. And there's going to be a lot when you roll on tables. You're going to have a lot of traumatic events. But as the PDF says, for now, all you need to know is that the new character starts with 0 trauma points. If you ever reach 100, you'll crack. I'm interested to see what that means. I don't know if that means the end of you or if that's just some in-game mechanic. And for wounds, you can take, typically as a normal character, you can suffer a maximum of 3 wounds at once before dying. Dying's not necessarily the end in this game, and I'll get to that. Let's go back to the character sheet for a minute. So stamina 10, and then I do have the max here, so you can tick down your stamina if you want, and maybe you track that with a separate, I think the book says to maybe have 10 coins or something, and you can kind of keep track of what you're using in piles or however you want to do that. It would be easy enough, probably not as much on this character sheet. Trauma, start at 0. I put a max of 100. 0 wounds, start at 0, and then a max of 3. So that's all preset for you. Skills. Now, I have not thought about this, so bear with me. If I take skills that you're wondering, why would he do that? That doesn't make any sense. It's because I haven't given it a whole lot of thought. But you have your skills range from incompetence at a value of 0 to complete and total mastery at a value of 15. So again, similar to attribute checks, skill checks, you roll a d20 and you will look at your value of your skill. You'll add that, and at 20 or more is a success. There are critical success and failures. I haven't looked enough to understand if that's just combat, or if it's all types of skill checks. I think it might be all, and a 1 is a failure, and a 20 is a critical success. So during character creation, distribute 50 points as you wish, spending no more than 10 points on one skill. It does say, kind of, again, like going back to my D&D roots, you can think of like a typical array if you don't want to think about spreading, because there are, see how many categories. Let's go back here and look on skills. I'll scroll down just a bit. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4. Looks like there's 11 skills. So if you don't want to do the math and assign points to all of them, it looks like they give you kind of an array of 10 to 5 points that encompass 7 of your skills. So let's just do that. I'm going to determine one that I want to do 10. What do I want to do 10? I'm looking at these: perception, crafting. I'm not a big crafter. First aid, I think, will be important. Scavenge. There's so many. You know what? This might be an odd one, but I'm going to pick resolve. I really want to be able to have a character with a strong kind of like internal constitution, mental fortitude. So I'm going to start with a 10 in resolve. And maybe after my first run through, maybe I'll change some of these. So then we'll do 8. I had thought early on first aid. I want to be able to patch myself up if I'm hurt. So I'm going to do first aid, 8. I'm going to do another 8 in, I had thought of persuasion. I want to be able to, because I'm solo, I think it's going to be important to talk to other NPCs and have some ability to influence them. 7, I know I want to have something around sneaking. I've always been a roguelike character, so I don't want that too far down the list. And I had initially thought maybe scavenge would be an important one to do 10, so I'm going to do 7 there. So I think I've got an 8, 8, 7, so 2 more for 5s. I want to have perception, so maybe being able to pay attention and see my surroundings. And then finally, melee. I don't want to be completely stuck in terms of having no ability and absolutely just no ability to know what I'm doing with the weapon. Sorry, no familiarity is the words I was looking for. All right. So these tell you a little bit more, and they're pretty obvious, but I can go through them briefly. Crafting. So there is a really cool mechanic within your apartment. You start an apartment, and it looks like you have the ability, as you gather things and scavenge items, you have the ability to craft things within your apartment. So I'll get into that again, maybe in another video, but that just know that is an interesting part of the game. First aid. So again, you do have an ability to make a check, and it does consume certain medical supplies. Lockpicking, pretty obvious. Melee combat, obvious. Perception. So just no matter how much you're looking for things, it should be more of a passive perception, I would think. Persuasion, being able to influence and talk to NPCs. Range combat, obvious. We talked about resolve. And then scavenge. Resources are scarce, so So being able to find everything you can, I think, is pretty important in this game. All right, let's get into checks. And I'm just going to go through these briefly because I already sort of mentioned these. So there are attribute checks, there are skill checks. We talked through those. You're going to roll a d20 and add your scores. And in some cases, it does have some language in the PDF that it certainly recognizes that not every action may be obvious and tell you exactly what it's for, but use your judgment. And if it's a non-skill action, then figure out what you think would work the best. Assisting on a skill check, this is interesting. Obviously, this can be done not just solo, but cooperative. But I suspect that maybe if you encounter NPCs and they become part of your party, then it's possible that they could assist on a skill check. And there are opposed checks. So when you're in direct competition with another character or an opposed check with an adversary, then there could be checks where you're running opposed checks. All right, let me get into just a few other things. Advantage and disadvantage. Again, back to D&D 5e in particular. Advantage will be you'll be rolling 2 d20s and take the most favorable result. Disadvantage would be the opposite. It does sound like there's some difficulty judgments to where you can add modifiers to your roll. So I think, again, this is probably more up to you in a circumstance, and it looks like maybe you can roll on it, or you can, I suspect you can also just use your judgment and say, hey, this seems like for this character to be hard. Let's do a -10 modifier. So here's the critical success and failures. So it does say rolling 1 on a d20 during either type of check is considered a critical failure. On the other hand, a 20 grants a critical success. So, and it looks like there are some combat specific results from critical success failures. But that's that. Combat, there is initiative. I think most of the time you go first. Apologize if I have that wrong. I'm going to skip through that relatively quickly. Wounds and injury. So during combat, you'll receive wounds and become injured. If you get a non-fatal wound, then you start getting reductions to your actions. So you'll have like a -2 to all actions, and you also have to roll an injury table. So some pretty interesting detailed mechanics. And there's also under death. So this is really interesting, and I like this, again, from a solo standpoint. The comment here is death comes often and swiftly in the twisted world of under Ashen skies, whether it's coming to poison or at the hands of a Phonos. Player characters will sooner or later have to deal with consequences. So whenever you die, you roll on the death table. So it looks to me as if you have roughly, well, not roughly, you do have a 20% chance of dying forever. So if you roll a 1 or a 2 on a d10, your soul's lost forever, you're gone. And it looks like if you roll a 3 to a 10, then there are some things that stay with you or linger, and that'll be part of your character as you move forward, but you're not gone forever. So I like that. Privation, so there's some mechanics around food and water, and I'll show you that as we get into the time tracking. Perhaps I haven't looked at this too much lately, but again, solo RPG, it's great that there is a mechanic in here that you do have a trap. There's consequences, obviously. There are dex checks. There's perception. There's different injuries here, which is great. So it looks like if you do if you do trigger a trap, it looks like if you might have some type of setback, which is really cool. There's a concept of trauma. Human mind is a fragile thing. And then it talks a bit about what happens if you do incur a certain amount of trauma, and it does affect your role playing. And there are in here, it does talk about you do get trauma from not having a light source. So whether it's number of rooms explored or light sources, you do get trauma if you don't have a light source. I think I said that a little bit wrong, but it does affect you if you don't have like a flashlight or a torch or something. Tracking time. So very detailed mechanic, but there's a lot around days of the week, and there's certain things that happen And so there's day tracking and the daemons. So what it states in here is that each 10 cycles equals a day, and all newly created characters start the game on a Monday with no effects. As each day of the week passes, the week is presided over by a different protogenoi. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. Or each protogenos has a neutral aspect, a negative aspect, and a positive aspect. So this is all part of the cycle of the day, the entire exploration. So time is really important. And there are certain times on the time track as you advance it, and it tells you up here when you advance on the time track, if you're being cautious, number of rooms you explore, what you do in the room, all of these things advance the time track. Now, I have been going back and forth with the author, although the image does talk about having to change your battery. Like if you look at this time track here, it looks like you have to change your battery 3 times in one complete cycle. So once you've gone through this entire time track, that's called a cycle. But after exchanging direct messages with him on his Discord, and there is a Discord server, you can ask questions, he did confirm they've changed that. I believe lighting a torch and changing a battery is just once per cycle. So that's something to keep in mind. So if you go back to the character sheet, so again, you don't start with talent, so we're good there. Emotional state is optional. I may or may not get into that. There is a discussion in the in the rulebook that basically says you might want to wait until you're a little more familiar with the game before you start dealing with the emotional state. And then you have a weekday. I did do a drop down here. I try not to do many drop downs because I want to be conscious and respectful of intellectual property. But days of the week I thought was fine. Here are the cycles, and the way I've set this up, every third cycle will trigger what's called the devouring, and it changes the map that you're on and what happens. Really cool. So another one that I probably can't get in too deep on this video, but it's basically it triggers some events and things. So you'll notice as I click through on this cycle, nothing changes here. But if I go to the third one, it does trigger the devouring, and then 4th, 5, 6. So on the 6th, the 2nd, and then 7th, 8th, 9th, it triggers it there as well. So tried to automate where I could, but that's handled in here to some degree. All right. So the time track. So you can see that each day of the week has its own, I think it's called, let me just, photogenos. And it talks about what happens there. You roll on a D10 at the beginning, and it tells you for that day what is the effect for that day. I haven't really put that in the character sheet, but it looks like I probably don't have to. You would just add that for the day. So pretty cool. All right, emotions. So again, this does talk about how it could be confusing at first. So if you look here, the suggestion is new players ignore the rules until they're more comfortable. So let's skip over that, but just know this game can get very deep, and I find that pretty exciting. Tracking gear. So again, there are mechanics. That's one I don't feel necessary to go into too much detail here, but all characters begin the game with a sport bag. The important thing to know about that, and it's on the character sheet here. And I did put, one other thing. I did make a note down here at the bottom. I called it an errata, but just an explanation. Torches and batteries last one full cycle. So instead of having to look at this and think that every time you get to, like, you click down here and you're moving through your cycles, oh shoot, I've got to change a battery, light a torch. What I'm planning on doing is as soon as I finish cycle and I'm ready to go to the next day, that's when I'm going to say, hey, I need to either change my batteries and or light a torch. All right. So bags, there's bags, pockets, a lot of information there. Let's go for a second before I get into exploration and gameplay. I'm going to go to this section that's called of fleeting possessions and the means to obtain them. So I've jumped forward in the PDF. The reason I've done that is because it does talk to you about starting gear. Everyone that wakes up in Riverside finds themselves with similar starting gear. You have a flashlight, 2 batteries, 5 rations, medical supplies, bandage, boots. So there's a concept that we haven't gone through yet around temperature. So because of what's happening in the world, which I still don't really know what that is, but because of what's happening in the world, certain sites that you visit will have varying degrees of cold. And if it's too cold and you don't have enough warmth, you're not prepared. And there are game mechanics that will hinder you because of that temperature disparity, if you will. So in this case, what I've done does say one random melee weapon. Without spoiling too much, when you read the intro, that again is a little more of a story as you wake up. I'll let you read that on your own if you buy this. But it looks like maybe you start with a knife based on that, like a kitchen knife. But there is a weapons table, so I think you could probably also just roll on that random melee weapon table. So if we go back to the character sheet here, on the second page of this sheet is all of the inventory, and it'll show you like how many items you can have for each section of your character. So one for your head, chest. There is only one, but it also talks in the rule book about back and shoulders, and jacket would go on your back and shoulders. So for now, I've just set this up so you can have two, one for your chest, one for your back and shoulders. And I'll read more about that weapon later. I put this random weapon up in memories. That's a mistake. That should be probably in your hand. I just wanted to designate. There we go. Here's your random weapon. I wonder if hopefully I didn't do that wrong. Oh, I did. I have to update the PDF. It looks like I tied those sections together. So I'll fix that. But you start with 5 rations, 1 medical supply, jeans, boots. And here's where I put your sports bag. You get 10 items. Each of these listings, if you will, have 10 slots. So I've set this up to where it should fit pretty well. And it should, if you hit return, it'll give you the right section on the sheet. So right now, I think, even though the batteries are 2, I think it takes up 1 space, but you've got 10 slots basically here. And here's what you start with. All right, so let's go back to explaining gameplay. So at the core of Under Ashen Skies, it's all about exploration. So without going through each and every piece of exploration, this walks you through the gameplay. So you'll randomly select a site, and there are maps that come outside of the core rulebook. And when you do purchase the PDF, you'll have other downloads such as a PDF and a character sheet. And you can see over here on sites, you can randomly choose. You have to start in the apartment block. That's why I highlighted this up here. Once you exit your apartment, so literally you walk out of your apartment and you're now in the apartment block. You have to clear out that site before other sites become available. But once you do, you can select any of these other 4 sites. So what's really cool, I won't show you this now, but each of the site has kind of an alternative map. Each has 2 floors and a number of locations. And as you encounter the devouring, then you'll flip that map over, or you'll go to the devouring section of that map. It'll look different a bit, and it's kind of a cool additional twist, I think. So you select your site, you travel to the site, and this will tell you up here, travel to the site is a +1 on the time track. Determine the cold factor, which we talked just a little bit about. Peril level, I'll go through that a bit after I go through this, but basically how dangerous is that site that you're going to. You might have ambush encounters, you explore the room. Once the site's cleared, you mark the progress on the exploration track. So in addition to the time track, you'll be trying to complete the exploration of your site. So the basic way that works is the more rooms you encounter, the more things you do, you will get further on that exploration track. And at some point, you will want to and have to encounter basically I believe it's called Mahke, if I'm pronouncing that right. Mach or Mahke, Mahke, but really the boss of that section. So, and there's mechanics around that are probably outside of this video, but you will finally encounter a boss there, and you actually can clear these sites more than once. So it feels like a lot of the goal of this game is just to keep unraveling, uncovering who you are, what kind of person you are, what have you done, good and bad things. So you'll be able to clear these out more than one time. So, and you keep track of your nemesis. So your nemesis, it looks like to me, is basically your doppelganger, and they are trying to hunt you down. and keep track of your supplies and ammo on the time track, and then the investigation track on that site. All right. So choosing a site, I don't want to go through and spoil all of the sites, but there are mechanics and there are descriptions of each site that you'll have. And there's tons of random tables as you get into each room, what do you find in that site? So I think I can't wait to jump into this. So temperatures, again, we talked about this, but there's a cold factor, and you'll determine the cold factor of a site by rolling a D12 when you get there. If you're carrying a torch, I didn't highlight that. It's already bolded, but carrying a torch will grant +1 warmth. So that will certainly help you. Peril. So to keep things interesting, an ever-present danger. Scroll down a bit. Enemies found within these sites have a peril level. So by default, sites have a peril level equal to the player's level bracket. So I haven't looked a lot at leveling up, but obviously you'll be at level 1, or you should be, I suspect, as we first start. So this kind of describes the peril level. And ambush encounters, you heard me talk a little bit about that. You're going to roll a d6 and determine the possible ambush encounters. So this is more, to me, like if you're thinking about other role-playing games, kind of like I think a random monster threat level is how I think about this. So you roll on a d6 and it tells you how many possible encounters you're going to have. Site exploration. So this gets into the mechanics of the exploring the room features, room contents, and again, dozens of tables for each different site to go through that. Room features. So this, just briefly, this is the apartment block room features. So you can see you're rolling on a D100. I don't want to show you all of these, but I'll pass through them. Most of them take up 2 dice rolls. So basically, it looks like to me there's 50 of these descriptions for each site, if I think I'm saying that right. So, I mean, just massive amount of data and tables, which is awesome. Like this little storage room image. All right, room contents, the same. So once you've done that, you might find scavenging, you might find crafting ingredients, you might find a puzzle. There are puzzles in this, which is awesome. Or maybe a drained body. What is that? I don't know, but I do not want to spoil that for myself. You've got the devouring. So this talks a bit more about the devouring. On a normal day, there's all kinds of weird things, but all of that pales in comparison to the horrors that happen during what the few locals that are left call the devouring. So I'll leave it to you to discover that. But I will say that if you're unfortunate enough to die while the devouring is active, the taint will take hold of your soul, causing some changes that are permanent, which I think is awesome. Exploration track. So this is where, as you clear a site, and you can see, you can clear it as much as 10 times, and I think then it resets. So you can continue to go through this time and time again, but you can, once you get through it once, then it's kind of like you level up a bit. You get a new talent, you roll on the talent table. So you don't always get something, but once you clear it out for the 4th time, you get 100 Nimi. Sorry, I'm pronouncing that badly. So again, a lot of this is about leveling up your character. Your nemesis and the nemesis track. So one of the most dangerous and disturbing things is your nemesis. It's a twisted version of yourself, identical capabilities, but surpassing you in viciousness and ferocity. So I'll let you, that's another one that I'd rather have you investigate yourself, but pretty cool. Investigation track. So once you're in a site, you'll be basically making check marks on this. It'll tell you when and how, in terms of how you progress in your investigation. And then at some point during the investigation track, you will want to find the Make, M-A-K-H-E, who is basically the boss of this section. So you got to be careful, because if you want to try to find the Make, you can roll on a D100, but basically, if you roll if you roll your score on the investigation track or less, you've successfully investigated and found the Make. But if you don't, and if you try to do this when you're at 40 and you roll a 45, then you fail the investigation check, but the Make still appears. that strikes me that that's probably a bad thing. Puzzles. So again, you heard me on, as you're investigating, you might come across a puzzle. So I'm anxious to go through this. I haven't gone through this in a ton of detail yet. Non-player characters. There's random NPCs. So I find that really cool. So you'll actually roll for some of their attributes and skills. And there's also what they call dramatis personae. So those are like your core, your critical NPCs. Don't want to spoil those at all, but you can see down here that there are some ways to roll for those NPCs, but there's a ton of dramatis personae. So, or not a ton, sorry, but there's several that I've seen. So there's several NPCs that are very critical. And the cool thing with them is the more you meet them, they will reveal more and more, I think, about themselves and maybe about what's happening. I don't know. All right. Random encounters. So you're going to encounter phonoi, or phonos singular, and the rare, more dangerous Makai, or Make is the singular. Again, feel free to light me up if I butchered the presentation. So the enemies have all this detail behind them, which I'll let you discover yourselves. What else? There's starting gear we talked about, slots, item size. We can get to the instruments of harm. So weapons. So you can choose, there's different types of weapons. There's unarmed attacks, improvised weapons. Looks like there are different characteristics of weapons and quality. So here's where, like when you're first starting out, I think you saw, it does say that you can have a random weapon. So you could probably just pick one of these. I don't think any of them are super over OP. But if you roll on a D86, like that's, or a D8 for 10s and a D6 for 1s. How does that work? It's 11. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it looks like there's 7 here. Anyway, this is your table for a random melee weapon. And then you have ranged weapons as well. I've not looked much into the ranged weapons, but rocks, bricks, knives, debris, pistols. So obviously when you get into pistols, rifles, shotguns, you have ammo. And there are sections for that here on weapons. And then if it's a two-handed weapon, you can click on this so you know that you can only have one weapon if it's two-handed, obviously. And I guess the last thing in here is shrines. Not read about this either, but while you're in your apartment, it looks like you can build various shrines to the proto-genoi that govern Riverside. So I suspect that has some helps or some helpful things to you. And then finally, there are also darker secrets that I won't touch on. It sounds like that is very adult themed, so you don't have to use those. But there will be times, I think, when you'll uncover a secret. And if you want to get even darker than the standard version of the game, there's even more advanced, darker themed mechanics. So that's it. I will clean up the character sheet a bit. Like I said, I saw that one issue I found, but I will put this out for free. I would strongly encourage you to check out Blackoath Entertainment's games, including Under Ashen Skies, but I might report back once I've played a few games and let you know how it plays. But I am super excited to play this and tell you how it plays. So in the meantime, again, I would encourage you to go out to DriveThruRPG and buy a copy yourself. For right now, it's $12. I think it's a bargain if you just want the PDF alone, and have some fun. So thanks again for watching, and until next time, hope to see you out on the Discord forums. I'm active on Fantasy Grounds, Virtual Tabletop quite a bit. I do a lot with audio, so if you need any help there, just let me know. But have a great rest of your night, day, weekend, whatever it is when you're watching this video. Take care.